Hi all, welcome to screencast number 1 for anxiety. Today we're looking at anxiety, the different types of it and how potentially it could affect our sporting performance. So first of all then we need to know what anxiety is. So anxiety is the negative aspect of experiencing stress. It's a worry, that unpleasant feeling that you might experience because of the fear of the possibility of failure. So thinking back to something that we've studied already, our knack and naff personalities. So it could be linked to a person that wants to avoid failure, might have high levels of anxiety because they have that fear of possibly failing. So they would avoid situations that they might fail in. So Orlick has done a lot of work, and his kind of quote there hits it on the head. So when an athlete's performance suffers in an important event, it is often because of too much worry about the outcome. So they're too busy thinking about the result that they need rather than concentrating on the actual performance. So being solely concerned with winning causes an increase in anxiety. So this is our need to avoid failure kind of people. So because winning becomes so much of a concern, the anxiety levels that they have are increased. So the different types then. Now these words we've come across already within arousal. So we know somatic is linked with psychological changes and cognitive is linked with our psychological changes and how that works. So somatic anxiety then are physiological responses to a situation where a performer feels they may be unable to cope. These physiological responses, so as their anxiety levels increase, you would see symptoms such as increased heart rate, sweaty palms, tension in the muscles, and a feeling of nausea. So some of those you would see outwardly, some of those you'd feel as the performer, and you'd probably experience those. Maybe at the start of a game, your pulse starts racing. You need the loo, so you can sometimes feel the nervousness that anxiety might bring because you're worried about what your performance is going to be like. So cognitive anxiety then are all to do with our thoughts. We know that cognitive is linked to the brain and thinking processes. So it's our feeling of nervousness or apprehension, that kind of worry that you might have as a performer because you think you have a lack of ability to complete the task successfully. So cognitive anxiety is all linked to our feeling or our thought process that we have because we worry that we may not be able to complete a task. Now, the causes of anxiety vary quite greatly from person to person. For some, it could be like the smallest hint of maybe an audience. So inexperienced performers might feel more anxiety if they're having to perform in front of an audience, and also sometimes even the pressure of performing in front of peers. So linking back to what we did in arousal, so that evaluation apprehension, they become more anxious because they're worried peers watching them or other people watching them will make a judgment. They will evaluate their performance. So we're all linking these different things together. So researchers have distinguished between two further types of anxiety, and anxiety tends to be based on quite an emotional state. So state anxiety is the emotional reaction of someone to a situation that they experience as threatening. So the emotional reaction of a performer, because within a situation they think this is quite threatening in terms of they're worried that they might fail, or it makes them feel a little bit uncomfortable. So Spielberger did a lot of work in terms of anxiety types and how it affects performance and why we get it. So for him, state anxiety is characterized by subjective but consciously perceived feelings of apprehension and tension. These feelings of tension and apprehension can be accompanied by or associated with the activation or arousal of the autonomic nervous system. So anxiety runs through our nervous system. Now we'll link, there's quite a mouthful, so we will link it to a sporting example. So a player's level of state anxiety changes from moment to moment. So we'll take a basketball game. Now, At the start of a game, you've been chosen for a tip-off, so your feelings of apprehension and tension may increase because you feel like this situation is becoming slightly threatening because you have to win this tip-off for your team. So your level of state anxiety will be elevated. You feel that this experience is threatening. Now, for different people, this level, for the same situation, the level may be higher for one person than it is another. It depends how your personality is linked to it and how, as a person, you feel like the pressure. So for me, it may be that the tip-off is just another tip-off. For you, it may be, right, I've got to win this tip-off because I've got to get it back for my team. Okay? So we'll carry on with our basketball one. So as we said, it could change from moment to moment. So as you settle into the match and playing the game, you're feeling less anxious because you're settled and you're focused on just playing. Your state anxiety level will lower. So it'll start to lower as you get more settled. It could then potentially rise again. So a different moment. We're getting towards the end of the game. It's quite close. You've got to make that crucial pass, that crucial free throw or shot. So your anxiety level might then begin to rise again because of this pressure, this experience that the situation is becoming slightly more threatening because of the actions make quite a difference on maybe the outcome that will happen at the end of the game. So state anxiety, your reaction to a situation because you feel like you're slightly more threatened. The experience of it is quite threatening. So the other one that was distinguished is the trait anxiety. So we've gone from a situation to anxiety that is linked to a personality. So trait anxiety, as a personal trait, there is a tendency to react to situations in an anxious way. So the other one was looking at our situation, trait is looking at our personality. So our level of anxiety is higher or lower in different individuals in the same situation because of their different personalities. So Spielberger again, trait anxiety is an acquired behavioural habit that predisposes an individual to perceive a wide range of non-dangerous circumstances as threatening. Okay, so as a person, my habits that I would usually use in a set situation are changed because I have a higher trait anxiety, so I perceive those same situations as more dangerous and threatening than I normally would. So in response to this, our state anxiety reactions change. So our reactions in terms of our heart rate and so on increase in intensity and magnitude because of this objective danger. So, or the danger that we now think that we see or feel within the situation. So from person to person, we will see different situations as with different levels of threat. So we'll go for an example again. So in rugby, we might have two players that are both kicking the same final kick in the last couple of seconds of a game, and it's a match winning kick. Okay, same distance, same score line, exactly the same scenario, but each will react in different ways. So one personality of kicker number one he's quite laid back, so he would have a low trait anxiety. He doesn't really perceive this situation as threatening, so although it's a last minute kick, he will see this as exactly the same as any other kick that he's done in the game. So his anxious reactions won't be any more intense, they won't grow in any kind of way, and he will just kick it as per normal. Okay, he's controlled his level of anxiety. However, the other player might have quite a high trait anxiety, and therefore he would find this situation quite threatening. That pressure of having the last kick and this his normal behavioural habit, his little routines that he would do in a kick, have changed because he now perceives this circumstance as threatening. So as a response, his reactions become disproportionate to normal. So he has a higher intensity. His heart rate might be increasing even faster. He might be sweating and getting quite clammy. Okay, so this danger has become magnified compared to a normal kick because of the situation, the change, and the fact that it's the last couple of seconds of the game. It's win or lose, all on this kick. He's applied that objective danger because of the situation he's seen himself in. So for him, the response is going to be slightly different. So in closing then, looking at what we've done all together. So 2 different kinds of people. So anxious people will perform optimally when they have low levels of arousal. As their arousal increases, as will their anxiety. So they need a low level of arousal. They need to try and keep quite calm to perform at their optimum level. Whereas people at the opposite end of the scale, who tend to be quite laid back and relaxed, require high levels of arousal to boost themselves up so that they provide an optimal performance. So they need to be raised higher to be able to give that same performance. So how do they control these things? Is there a way to look at how their levels of arousal to help them maintain an optimal performance level? So better performers will be able to control their arousal and in anxiety producing situations. So as their anxiety might start to rise, they'll be able to control their arousal and eliminate those aspects that they might make them anxious within a situation. Most of this is done through cognitive processes, so through thought. So maybe a bit of self-talk, focusing on a certain point, or just a trigger within the game that will help them maintain their control and stop them becoming over aroused and out of their optimal performance zone, the optimal functioning zone. Or even small things, so less experienced performers tend to contain pre-competition anxiety. That's just an example with structured warm-ups, which is why coaches tend to bring out certain warm-ups so they can go through a routine and it will keep them very level-headed. They know what they're doing, they know when they should be doing it, and it gives them something to focus on to try and contain and control their levels of arousal and anxiety before a game. So it's really important that you've made notes on all that you've heard today. Make sure that you know the 4 different types of anxiety, what the differences are between them, the definitions of those of anxiety, and what it is, so that you're able to describe what anxiety is and apply the different types to it. So you know the different types that somebody might undergo and how they change within a match. Make notes, write down any questions, and I'll see you next lesson.